Hello and welcome to another Excel tips video. I'm Sumit Bansal, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to use the let function in Excel. Now let is a new function that is available in Excel 2021, 24 and Excel for Microsoft 365 and also Excel on the web. So if you're using any of these versions, then you would have access to this function. Now this function was released 4 years ago, and at that time I did not think this is a useful function, but the more I've been using it, the more I feel that this is quite useful when you're working with long complex formulas. So with the let function, you can store intermediate values. These could be cell references, these could be calculations within the formula itself and reuse them again and again. So I'm going to show you how this can help you simplify complex formulas. So in this video, I'm going to first show you the basics of the let function, then show you some advanced examples. So let's get to it. Let me explain how the let function works with a simple example, and then I'm going to show you more useful and more complex formulas that can be simplified with it. So here I have these items. I have the price and their tax rate, and I want to calculate the final price, so I can multiply this value B2 with 1 plus the tax rate, and this gives me the result here, and I can copy it down. Now this is a very simple formula, but let me show you how you can use the let function to do the same thing. So I'm going to first expand the formula bar. Now the reason I'm expanding it is because when you are writing the let function, let formula, it is a good idea to have it in multiple lines, and when you do that, it is easier to go through and audit the formula or understand the formula. So here I'm going to start with let. And the let function takes these following arguments, where the first one is going to be name1, then the second argument is going to be the value of that name, which means that I can have a cell reference or a value or a calculation and give it a specific name, and then I can reuse that name instead of using that calculation. So in this case, let's go to the next line. So I would hold the Alt key and press the Enter key. So it takes me to the next line, and here I'm going to type P and then have this cell here, which means that instead of using B2, now I can use the name, which is P, because I have assigned P to this cell value. And now I go to the next line and say TR, which is tax rate. And here I would select this cell. So instead of C2, I can use TR, then again, comma, then I would go to the next line. Now within the let function, your last argument should always be the calculation that you want the formula to return. So in this case, I want to do the calculation, which is price multiplied by 1 plus tax rate. So I'm going to use P multiplied by 1 plus TR. And now when I hit enter, it is going to give me the result of this. So this is the calculation that I have in the let function that is going to return the value in the cell. But everything before this is just initialization, just like in code where I have this variable and I've assigned a value to the variable. Now this is a very simple example where I have just assigned a cell reference, but you can also assign full calculations to it, as we will see later in the video. So now when I hit enter, it again gives me the same result, and I can drag this down. So this is the syntax of let function. Very simply, it is just a way to create variables that can store values or cell references or calculations and then reuse them in the formula. So let me show you another example where the let function would help us simplify the calculation. So here I have these names, and what I want is to get the result in this format where I want the last name, then a dash, and then the first name. Now, as of now, I have already written a text formula here that uses right, len, find, and left, and I have got the result here. But I'm going to show you how to do the same thing using a let function. Now, the benefit of using the let function in such cases is that it is, first of all, easier to write and manage these formulas, because this may look a little more complex to you than the let formula, as you'll see. So here in this cell, I'm going to type let. Actually, let me go to the formula bar. And now I'm going to go to the next cell. And as I said, it is always a good idea to create your let formulas in multiple lines because they become easier to manage. Now in this case, I need to use two variables, one that would store the first name and one that would store the last name. So let's write those variables. So let's say fn for first name, or you can choose something more descriptive such as first name. And then I would have the calculation that would get stored in this variable name. So I would have the calculation, which is this part of this calculation, which is the left formula. So the left formula identifies the position of the space character and then extracts everything which is to the left of it. So it gives me the first name. Now what I'm doing here is I have this formula, and the result of this formula is going to be stored in this variable name called first name. And now I would go to the second line here. Let's call it last name. Another interesting thing I would show you is that while you are creating these variables, Excel would also show you these variable names in the IntelliSense when you use it. So let me explain how that works. Let me first create this. So this is the part of the formula that would give me the last name, comma, and now I'm going to use these two variables to get the result in this construct. So here I'm going to use last name dash first name. See what happens as I type, Excel shows me this name in the IntelliSense, which is telling me that this is a variable within this formula. Now the scope of this name is just this formula, which means that you will only see this in this formula itself. You will not see it in any other let formula. You will only see the variable name that is defined in that specific formula. So here I have last name, then I would have an ampersand, then a dash, then ampersand, and then first. And again, it shows me first name here in the IntelliSense, and this becomes my formula. And now when I hit enter, it gives me the same result, and I can copy it for all the other cells. Now, this may look slightly more complicated as compared to this, because in this case, first of all, I've broken it into multiple lines and I have this. So if I am getting something wrong with the first name or the last name, I can quickly audit these parts. And then if I just want to go through the formula, then this is my formula, which is a lot more descriptive. I know what is happening. I have last name, then ampersand, then dash, then ampersand, and then the first name. So it's a lot easier to read. So when you have formulas that start becoming a little more complex, especially nested if formulas, then let function would really help simplify those formulas. Another big benefit of let function is that it improves the performance, because in this case I'm calculating this formula once and then storing the value here, and in this case I don't have to calculate it again. So if there is something that is being calculated multiple times in your formula, assigning a variable and then using that variable is going to be a lot more efficient. So this is an example. Again, my idea here was to show you that you can store the value of a calculation in a variable. Now let's see some more practical examples of using the let function. So here I have this data set where I have these names, and I have the scores in 3 different exams: practicals, midterm, and finals. Now all of these values are out of 100. So I want to first calculate a weighted average of all these 3 exams. And the weight is here 20% for practicals, 30% for midterm, 50% for final. And then of that final score, I want to see what is the grade of the student. And that is going to be calculated using this table. So if the score is more than 90, then it is A. If it is 75 to 90, then it is B, and so on. So if you do it using a regular nested if function, this is the kind of function you will have to write, where you would have to calculate the weighted average score, the weighted score every time, and then you would have to check whether it is more than 90 or more than 75 and so on. So let's see how you can do the same thing with a let function, which is going to be a lot more efficient. So here, in this case, I've already created the formula, and this is the let formula that is going to do this. Now, first of all, the biggest thing is it is a lot easier to read and manage. And the second thing is, you would notice that in the if function, I was using this part of the formula again and again, because I had to calculate this value and then check whether this is more than 90 or more than 75. So with the let function, what I've done is I have first created a variable WTS, which is weighted score, and then assigned the value of this calculation to this variable. And now I can just reuse this variable again and again. So I can just say, if the score is more than 90, then give me A. If it is more than 75, give me B, and so on. And this makes my let function. You can see this is so much easier to manage, so much easier to even go through. And if I have to make any changes, I can quickly do it. So I don't have to make any changes in all the places. If something changes here, if the weightages changes, then I can simply come here and I can change those weights here. So you can see let function is a lot more useful when you have large complex formulas, especially nested if. Now, so far, what we have seen is that the let function gives us the result in the same cell or in the same column. But you can also use let function to get the results in multiple columns. Yes, you can have one single function that would spill over and give you the result in multiple columns. So let's see how that's done. So here I have this data set where I have the names of these sales rep, the number of units that they have sold, price per unit, and the commission percentage. And I want to calculate these 3 columns: the revenue, the commission, and the net value, where the revenue is going to be units sold multiplied by price. The commission value here is going to be the revenue value multiplied by the commission percentage, and the net is going to be revenue minus commission. Now in this case, I have created these formulas. So I have created these formulas. You can see in the formula bar, these are separate formulas for all these 3 separate columns. Now, Let me show you how you can actually use one single let formula to get all the results in all these three columns. So let me select this cell here, which is H2, and I've already created the formula, so I'm pasting it in and I will explain this formula. But this is the let formula that I've created. And now when I hit enter, it gives me the same result in all the cells in multiple columns. So you do not even just get the result in one single cell or one single column, you can get it in multiple columns. Now let me quickly explain what happens in this let formula. First, I have this variable called price, and I have assigned C2 to C9 as the price variable. So you can use a range if you want. You can just use one single cell, or if you're using a table, you can use the name of the column. Then I have commission percentage, so I've called it compper, and that is D2 to D9, and then I have the revenue numbers, which is B2 to B9 multiplied by the price. So you can see once you have created a variable, then you can continue to use it multiple times within the same let formula. So here I have B2 to B9 multiplied by the price, which gives me the revenue value. Then to calculate the commission, I have revenue multiplied by the commission percentage, and the net revenue by this formula, revenue minus commission. Now this is all fine, but to get the result in three separate columns, I have used a choose function where I have 1, 2, 3. Now when I use 1, 2, 3 in curly bracket, it knows that this needs to return a 3 value array, which is going to be 1 in, so this value 1 is going to be in the cell where the formula is used, 2 is going to be in the cell in the next column, and 3 is going to be in the cell in the third column. So I have created this. So I expect this to give me a result where there is going to be 3 values, and it is going to spill because I have dynamic arrays. And then what are going to be these values? The first one is going to be revenue, the second is going to be commission, and the third is going to be net revenue, exactly what I wanted. So now when I hit enter, it gives me all these values here. And because I'm using C2 to C9 and D2 to D9, it automatically fills all the rows. So not only can you use let function to simplify your formulas, but you can also use it to minimize your work by having multiple formulas within the same formula and then spill it over multiple rows and columns. Here is another practical example to use the let function. So here I have these values and I want to create an amortization schedule. So I have the principal amount, let's say principal loan amount that is given, and the duration, which is 60 months, and the annual interest rate, which is 4%. So I need to create an amortization schedule, which would give me the payment that needs to be done for 60 months to pay back this loan at this interest rate. So here you can see I've already done this. I have these 60 months, and by the end of 60 months, all the payment is given, all the principal payment is done. Now, to do this, I've used 3 separate formulas. Here I have the sequence function, which takes B2, which is 60 here. So it gives me a sequence of numbers from 1 to 60. Then I have the PMT function here, which gives me the payment of the interest that needs to be done every month. And then I have used the cumulative principal formula here that gives me the cumulative principal that is deducted, and then I deduct this value from the principal amount, so it gives me the balance principal amount that is left. Now this is all fine, but I can do everything using one single let formula, just like I showed you in the previous example. So here I've already created the let formula, so I'll explain that formula, but let me quickly put it here. And now when I hit enter, you can see it gives me the result with one single formula. Now what I've done here is I have the let function and I have created these variables: loan amount, which is B1, then time period, which is B2, which is 60, and monthly interest, which is B3 divided by 12, because this is annual and I want monthly interest. And then I've just done all these calculations, all these separate calculations here in the let formula itself. So I have the interest payment, which uses the PMT function. Then I have the principal balance, which is the loan amount, which is here cell B1, minus the cumulative principal formula. And within this, I have already used these variables. You can see I'm using the variable monthly interest and time period because I've already defined these variables. The reason for this is that in case something changes, in case I have to change the cell reference or the value, I don't need to do it anywhere else. I can simply come here and make those changes here in the beginning, and the rest of the formula would take care of itself. And then finally, I again use the choose function. So I know that it needs to return 3 array result, which would be going to be these 3 cells in the row. and I then use the sequence. So it gives me a sequence of all these time period from 1 to 60. Then the interest payment, so it gives me this value, and the principal balance variable, which gives me this value. And as soon as I hit enter, it gives me this entire thing. Now you can see this formula is actually not too difficult, but it has helped me remove all these three variables and just put everything in one single formula. So this is again a practical example where you can use the let function. Let me show you one more practical example where this can be done. In this example, I want to create a dynamic calendar in such a way that I'm going to use one single let formula, and that is going to fill this entire grid. And this calendar is going to be dynamic in such a way that if I change the month name here or the year value here, this calendar should automatically update. So let me first show you the formula and then I'll explain how it works. So the formula, I already have it, so I'm putting it here, and I'll explain this formula in just a minute. And now when I hit enter, it instantly fills this grid. And you can see this is dynamic. So if I come here and I change this, I make this November, then you see that this calendar automatically updates. Or if I make it January, then this calendar automatically updates. Now, let me make this December here. Now, let me explain the let function. This is the let function. You can see it's not a very complicated formula. And the good thing about this function is that I do not have to now create a separate list of month names or anything else. This function is all that I want. And I have these two cells. And with just this formula and these two cells, I can create a dynamic calendar. So what this function does is it first has these variables that store the value of calculation. So I first need the first day that is given to me by this formula, this date formula. Now date formula needs the year value, which is in cell B1. Then it needs the month value. Now I have the month name, not the value. So I need to somehow convert DEC into 12 or JAN into 1. So I am using this formula here, month, and here I have the date function again within this formula. So B1 is going to be the year. Then I'm going to match this name with this range here. So if it is December, then this is going to give me 12. If it is January, it is going to give me 1. So my month number is going to come from here, and then my day value is again going to be 1. So in this entire thing, I have got a date which is going to be 1st December 2024. So this becomes the first day of the selected month. Then the last day of the month is going to be using the EO month, which is end of month formula, which is very simple, first day and then 0. Then the total number of days in the month is going to be using the day formula, which just takes the last day of the month and then gives me the total number of days. Then I need the start weekday, and this is done using the weekday function, which takes the first day value and comma 2, because I want the start of the weekday should be Monday and then Tuesday and so on. So this gives me a number, and I know that using that number that is the start of the month. For example, in this case, it is going to tell me that Sunday is the start of the month, which means that this is going to give me 7, which means that Sunday is the beginning of the month. If it is Monday, which is beginning of the month, then this is going to give me 1 and so on. Then finally, I have the calendar variable, which uses the sequence function where it is going to fill all these grids. So it has 6 rows, 7 columns, and the starting value is going to be 1 minus the start weekday plus 1. And what it is going to do is it is going to fill all these cells, but this makes sure that I get 1 when it is the starting day of the month. For example, in this case, if Sunday is the starting day, then this sequence function will ensure that these values, this is going to be -6 and -5, -4 and so on, and this becomes 1. If let's say Wednesday is the starting day of the month, then this would become 1 and the values before it is going to be negative. And then I simply use an if condition where I say if the calendar value is greater than or equal to 1, then give me that value. If it is not, if it is a negative value, then give me a blank, because I do not want anything to be shown here. So in this case, all these values are blank because these are negative values, which is less than 1, or this could be 0. But if it is more than 1, then it is shown. If it is not more than 1, it is not shown. And this one single formula gives me this calendar here. So again, you can see that let function can actually help you simplify your formula. But more than that, what I've noticed is that let function actually helps me go through these formulas a lot faster. If I want to quickly check what is going on here, I can quickly check from here and I can see what is my function. And this is the last part, the calculation, that is giving me the result. So it helps me first of all create these formulas in a easier way. It is easier for me to now audit these formulas. And if there is something that is being used multiple times, let's say in a nested if formula, then instead of repeating that same thing, that same calculation, you can just assign a variable name to it and then use that variable name instead of the full calculation. So it simplifies your formulas. So these are the examples that I wanted to show you. If you want to get this file, you can download it from the link in the description. That's it in this video. I hope you found this useful. Thank you and have a nice day.